Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first episode of CB's Gold. I am your host, CB Gold. You might know me from the MMA Roasted podcast. I've also made appearances on Half the Battle, the Loaded Joe's MMA podcast, and Aaron Says What. I'm starting my new show. It's going to be a YouTube show about MMA news covering promotions like the UFC, Bellator, World Series of Fighting, Invicta, and some other smaller promotions like Titan FC. And I'm just going to update you with all the latest news, fight announcements, fight changes, injury updates, event announcements, and sometimes we'll do predictions, we'll do takeaways and post-fight thoughts after certain events over the weekend. And I'll just keep you updated. Probably going to do 1 or 2 episodes a week. If there's a major update, such as like when Brock Lesnar was announced for UFC 200, I might do just a quick snippet show about that, just covering that real quick, just to keep you updated. So check out for new episodes on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button. I will also put out links on my Facebook, my Twitter, my Instagram, and my Snapchat as well. Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, all CB the Grenade. Facebook is CB Gold, so you can find me on there. And at the end of every episode, I'm going to take Twitter questions from fans, followers, whatever you guys want to call yourself, and I'm going to answer them on here. I'm going to cite the tweet, read out what you posted, and I'll give you my opinion on it. And if you're ever interested, just shoot me a tweet, ask me a question, and I'll make sure to answer it on the next show. So, let's get started. There's a lot of news to cover for this episode. So I'm going to start from the top. I made a lot of notes over the past week when I was figuring stuff out to put this out for you guys, first episode. So let's see. I guess I'll start with my favorite fighters. Some interesting news that I received about Conor McGregor and his upcoming fight, UFC 202, the Nate Diaz rematch at welterweight, 170. And a lot of people are talking about Conor's jiu-jitsu is just not all there, and I don't know if he was really training jiu-jitsu for Dos Anjos before Nate got in, and Nate's a tough jiu-jitsu player, one of the best in the game in my opinion. But it's interesting. I found out Conor brought in a Marcelo Garcia black belt under the name of Dylan Danis. He has competed in Metamoris. You've probably seen him compete in the ADCC and some Worlds and Gracie Nationals, stuff like that. Very talented black belt, as I said, under Marcelo Garcia, which is not an easy black belt to get. So Conor's going to work on that, work with him. So hopefully his jiu-jitsu is better. If we're really lucky as Conor fans, he won't get to the ground because he'll be able to stand and bang with Nate a little bit better this time around. So that would be really great. I'd love to see it. But if anybody's questioning his jiu-jitsu, I know it doesn't happen in one fight camp, but Dylan Danis is definitely a great person to bring in. So it should be interesting if it does hit the ground. Maybe Conor does a little bit better. Of course, Nate's always going to have better jiu-jitsu. But we'll just have to wait and see. I'm excited for it. One of the more pertinent news that has been released yesterday or today is that GSP is considering a comeback after a 3-year hiatus. He is discussing coming back, and he's ready to fight, depending on what his management can put together with the UFC. And one of the guys that he was talking about fighting upon his comeback was newly crowned middleweight champ Michael Bisping. I know Michael Bisping went on record about a week and a half ago saying he would love to fight GSP in his return. It's a good fight for both. Michael is the current UFC middleweight champion. He beat Luke Rockhold at 199. And I don't know what he walks around at, but he cuts a little bit of weight to get there, and I know GSP is walking around about, I think, 205, 210 right now. Very cut, but I think it would be a good matchup for both. If Bisping wins, he gets that name under his hat, and that's a huge name, one of the best ever. It really depends on what weight it would be at. And, GSP coming back and beating the middleweight kingpin could be a good thing for him as well. My opinion on the matchup, GSP is a tough puzzle. He's got great takedowns, good jiu-jitsu. His striking is there, but it's more at range. He doesn't really have knockout power. Bisping, we've seen, does have knockout power, but his wrestling defense isn't the best. And, if he's fighting GSP, that's going to be his biggest Achilles heel, because GSP is one of the best wrestlers that we've ever seen. And, people say he's boring and he just takes you down and grinds you. But you know what? I think that's the thing. If he can get you down, of course, I think, it also depends. Is it a 3-round fight, a 5-round fight? Either way, it's a good fight for both. GSP's been off 3 years. He has been training, but training for 3 years and fighting the best in the world for 3 years is a complete different circumstance. So I think it's a good fight. I think Bisping has what it takes to beat him. Can he knock him out? Probably. He's 15 pounds weight class above what GSP was fighting at. He's got knockout power. He's got the stamina to go 3 or 5. And we'll just have to see where GSP is. I'm not sure if Dana's really going to put that fight together as GSP's return. I don't know if that's the biggest sell you could put together, GSP Bisping. A lot of people are still talking about GSP Anderson, which could be an incredible fight, a fight that probably should have happened a few years ago, but it's still something that can be put together and really test both guys and see where they're at. But it really just depends on what Anderson wants to do and what the UFC wants to do. So in terms of that fight, I think it's a good fight. Again, we'll see what happens. We'll see if GSP is really ready to come back, between USADA testing and the Reebok sponsorship and whatnot. I think it's going to take more than people think to get GSP back in there. I think the deal has to be right for him. The opponent has to be right for him and his team, and for Asahabi and the TriStar guys to really think, is this the best comeback fight? So it's something to look forward to, something to keep thinking about. And if it does get announced, I will discuss it. So we'll have to see what happens. I like it, though. I like it a lot. Not the biggest GSP fan, not the biggest Michael Bisping fan, but as a UFC and an MMA fan, I would definitely pay to watch that for sure. So we'll see what happens. So next is a smaller fight announcement. UFC Fight Night 92 has been announced for Utah. I think it's in August. I think it's in August. It's in Utah, and we know that Alex Caceres versus Yair Rodriguez has been announced as the main event. That's a great fight. Both guys are very rangy, got great kickboxing. Caceres has his karate and very good on the feet. Yair, I think, has more power, and I think Yair is a little bit better on the ground. And Yair throws a lot of crazy strikes. He does his cartwheel kicks and the stuff like that. He's a crazier fighter. I think it's a great matchup. The one that was announced in the last few days, though, was Cub Swanson's making his return at 145, and he had just fought Hakan Diaz and he beat him, which was a great comeback for Cub Swanson. It had been a little while since we've seen him in the octagon. He suffered a few injuries, the broken jaws. That's a major setback. He wasn't sure whether he would come back, depending on what they wanted to offer him. So he came back. He beat Hakan Diaz, just beat him up, dominated him mostly for a well-rounded three-round decision. And he's making a quick comeback, coming in to fight Tatsuya Kawajiri. I think that's a great fight. Cub, very good on the feet, decent wrestling, decent jiu-jitsu, not the best jiu-jitsu, but Kawajiri, as I've said on the MMA Roasted podcast before, is a very tough puzzle. Dennis Bermudez fought him last, and he had a tough time with it, but he did well. Kawajiri throws a lot of spinning back fists, very unorthodox striker, another decent wrestler, a little bit of jiu-jitsu, but I think this fight stays on the feet. I think in a 3-round fight, I think both have a decent chance, but I think Cub has more power. Bermudez took him to a decision, so we'll have to see how Cub stands on this. It'll be interesting to see. And at the end of the day, I like Cub Swanson in it. I really do. I think Kawajiri is a good test for a lot of guys, but I think Cub Swanson has more tools to beat him at his own game. So that's a good fight coming up. Another 145 fight that has been announced, not for that card, but the UFC on Fox 21 card, which is an interesting fight. Charles Oliveira returns after kind of being very vocal about not getting a fight after doing very well in his last few. And he's facing a new 145er, former 155 kingpin, Anthony Pettis, who is dropping down to featherweight. I think this is a great matchup. I think Anthony Pettis has been long talking about coming to 145, and I think it's about time that he finally does it. He's going to do it. He's going to do the cut, and he's fighting a tough guy. Styles make matchups, and Pettis is more of a striker. Good jiu-jitsu. He submitted Ben Henderson to win the belt, but I don't think his jiu-jitsu is on the level of Garbrandt. I think Charles Oliveira's jiu-jitsu is on another level. I think he's one of the best jiu-jitsu players at 145, if not in the UFC, as we've seen him get some pretty crazy submissions over some great guys. I think it's a good fight. If it stays on the feet, I don't know. Pettis has wild kicks, but his last three, he hasn't done very well. Maybe he was at the wrong weight class. Maybe losing the belt to Dos Anjos in the fashion that he did kind of spooked him a little bit. And I'm not taking anything away from Dos Anjos or Pettis even. Pettis fought three great guys: Dos Anjos, Alvarez, and then Edson Barboza. And those were all tough fights, but those are like some of the 155 best. So the first two are fighting each other for the belt July 7th, and Edson Barboza's not far behind. Very tough guy. So if Pettis can keep it on the feet, get back to the old Pettis, use his kickboxing, use his kicks, I think he can keep Oliveira at range. If it goes to the ground, I don't know who would initiate the takedown. I'm sure Oliveira would more try to pull guard than go for a double leg because that's his style. I think Oliveira can submit him in any position. It just really depends. I'm a bigger fan of Garbrandt. I really like Charles Oliveira, but you can never really count Pettis out, but it also depends on the cut. But if I had to go out on a limb, I'm going to say Pettis wins in his 145 debut. So you can mark me down as that one as the fight gets closer. I think Pettis. So there you go on that one. Another interesting thing that I wanted to talk about with the TUF finale coming up, which is the day after the Alvarez-Dos Anjos fight. You have the TUF finale, Joanna versus Claudia, and you got the finalists from TUF who we don't know who they are yet. I've tried to get it out of a few of the TUF competitors that I've met in the past few weeks, but nobody really wants to tell me. This isn't like TUF Brazil where the finalist was announced even before the season aired. But we had a fight on there. It was Ross Pearson versus James Krause. If you weren't aware, James Krause has dropped out of that fight. He dropped out due to family issues, some complications with one of his family members, and it's very unfortunate. I know Krause, he's a friend, and he's a real good guy, great fighter. This is a great matchup, but you know what? Family comes first. Family comes before everything. So you gotta take care of what's most important. So he dropped out, and Ross Pearson has a new opponent. If you haven't heard, this is a pretty big announcement. Will Brooks, the former Bellator lightweight champion, has signed with the UFC, and he will be facing off against Ross Pearson in that fight at 155, July 8th, Las Vegas. That is an exceptional fight. I think it's a great test for Ross Pearson to move into the upper echelon, even though Brooks may not be ranked right now because he's new, but he was the Bellator lightweight champ, and anybody who knows anything about Bellator knows their lightweight division. The top of the heat does not have many slouches in it. He fought Michael Chandler, and he had fought other guys. There's other guys up there like Josh Thompson and Patricky Frady and other 155ers that are very talented. So I think this is a good test for Pearson. I think it's a great welcome fight for Will Brooks. If you beat Pearson, you start entering the top 15 rankings and starting to get better matchups. Coming from Bellator, you can't really give Will Brooks a title fight right off the bat. The 155 division has a lot of guys right now, and so it'll be interesting to see how they both do. They both are stylistically great strikers. Will Brooks has a little bit better wrestling. I think on the ground, it really depends. Can Brooks grind? Yes. Can he get a submission? Maybe. I think on the feet is where this fight stays, though. I think both are going to slug it out. Will Brooks might have the power to knock out Pearson, and it might go the other way where Pearson could knock out Will Brooks. I really don't know because it is that new test. It's that UFC. So it's going to be a very, very interesting matchup. I think it's going to be a very entertaining fight. And so we'll have to wait and see. Luckily, it's a free event, so you get to watch Will Brooks enter the UFC for free. And anybody who's a Ross Pearson fan, you get to see him perform again. So I'm excited for this fight. I really am. I don't want to pick anybody yet. It's too tough to pick. I don't have a prediction on that one yet. As we get closer to the event, I'll do my predictions and see where I stand. Some I have predictions right now, but other fights I think will be a little bit later. So we'll have to see what happens. Another unfortunate injury that has happened is the UFC on Fox 20 in Chicago card that is headlined by Holly Holm and Valentina Shevchenko. It was supposed to be Anthony Rumble Johnson versus Glover Teixeira. Anthony Rumble has dropped out due to injury, which is very unfortunate. I'm very, very sad about that. I'm a huge Rumble fan, huge Brazilians fan. I loved that fight. I thought that was a very good test for Rumble. I thought he was going to win, definitely. I thought he would knock out Glover and then get that winner of Jones and Cormier, that title shot against whoever that he's kind of been vying for since he lost the first time against Cormier when it was supposed to be Jones. So I'm a little sad about that. No instant replacement for Glover yet, but I'm sure with as much time as they do have to finish that card off, we'll get a replacement to fight Glover. So it'll be an interesting fight. In terms of another 205 matchup that has been announced for the Hamburg, Germany card, I think that card already has Ryan Bader's already on that card. They just announced another 205 matchup. You've got returning Alexander Gustafsson is coming back. He's been out for a little while. It was that title. I think his last fight was the title fight with Cormier, and he took a rest. And then on April Fools, he kind of fooled a lot of people, including myself. I will admit I was fooled that he was retiring and he was done. Glad he's coming back. He's fighting another very heavy-handed striker, European guy, Jan Blachowicz, who's a very talented striker, as I said. So that's a great fight coming up. So we'll see what happens with that one. I'm excited for that one. In terms of other replacements, there's one more that has been announced. Derek Brunson has dropped out of UFC 200 due to injury, which is very unlike Derek, but unfortunately something must have happened that really forced him to drop out, because he's not a guy that really drops out or does anything that would lose him the fight. He's dropped out of his fight against Gegard Mousasi, but they immediately found a replacement, Thiago Santos, who is doing very well right now. I know he lost to Uriah Hall, but then he came back and he beat Elias Theodoro for his first loss, and he's had a few. He beat Steve Bossy, knocked him out in the first round, and we know Steve Bossy had that amazing Fight of the Year candidate over the weekend against Sean O'Connell. So Thiago Santos is taking his place against Mousasi. Mousasi, for me, I'm not talking about his record. I've mentioned this before. In terms of Mousasi, he's kind of a 50-50 fighter. Not in terms of his record, so don't bombard me with tweets about how he's not a 50-50 fighter. But I think there's one of two guys that shows up when Mousasi fights. It's either the one that just runs through guys like he did with Dan Henderson and finished him early, or the one that shows up and he's not all there. You know, he was doing well against Uriah Hall, got knocked out. Jacare just dominated him, did very well against him. So it really depends on what Mousasi shows up. I think Santos has 100% ability to knock Mousasi out. I'm going with Thiago Santos. He's on a tear. I think he's a great up-and-comer. This is an amazing test for him against a big name. So we'll see what happens. I got Thiago Santos, calling him UFC 200, July 9th. There you go. A fight for a Brazil card at 155 has been announced. Two entertaining guys that I like. Francisco Trinaldo, also known as Massaranduba. He is stepping back into the octagon against recent decision winner from Cody Garbrandt card, Paul Felder, the Irish Dragon. And this is a very good matchup. You know, Trinaldo likes a little bit of striking on the feet, has some power. I think Felder is more technical, has a little bit more power than Ronaldo on the feet. I think the wrestling edge goes to Ronaldo, and the jiu-jitsu, it's a tough call. I think Francisco Ronaldo probably has a little bit better jiu-jitsu, but I don't know if this fight will hit the ground. If it does, it's a toss-up. Ronaldo could grind up, maybe get a submission. I don't think Felder's going to go for a takedown. So on the feet, I think Felder has the edge. In grappling, I think Ronaldo. Ronaldo's been doing very well. A lot of people don't think that Felder won his last decision. So I don't know. Who am I calling in this one on the Brazil card? It is in Brazil. If it goes to a decision, it might go to Ronaldo. It's his home country. And Felder's been a little iffy. Came in strong in the beginning, then just had some really tough fights. So right now, I'm not putting a prediction in. I'm just going to lay out what I think is could happen, and yeah, that's what I think. So we'll see what happens. The Invicta card, the newest Invicta card, has been announced. I'm going to flip over to that real quick. Invicta 18, which it's going to be in Kansas City, July 29th. So it's about a month away. There's no title fights. They're not doing any title fights, but the winner of the main and the co-main will get title shots. So Alexa Grasso is returning to fight Jody Escobar in the main event. The winner of that fight will most likely face Angela Hill for the strawweight belt. So that's happening. The co-main event is Irene Aldana versus Talia Santos at 135. The winner of that fight is most likely going to get Tanya Ebinger for her next title defense. Not sure when those are going to be. Invicta only announces one event at a time. But those are your two number one contender fights. Two other fights that are notable on the card. You got Jessamine Duke returning to fight Cindy Dandois. I like Jessamine. Jessamine's a friend. Tough fighter. It's an interesting matchup for her. I'm always rooting for Jessamine. I know Cindy's a very tough opponent. Has a lot of tools. If Jessamine can keep her range and use her striking a little bit, she could end up winning that fight. But Cindy is also well-rounded, very tough. So I'm not picking a dog in this fight. My desire would be for Jessamine to take it because she is a friend. I like her. I see her once in a while. She's always nice to me. But at this point, not making a prediction. Too early. I'll do my predictions as fight week comes. And so keep looking out for those. The other fight that has been announced for that card, which I think should be possibly a number one contender fight, is Megan Anderson, the blazing Australian who has just been kicking the hell out of people. Her last few fights, winning by knockout. Her last fight against Amanda Bell just destroyed her. I was at that fight. Very entertaining to watch. I was at her I think it was one or two fights before that when she fought Amber Leibrock and was outstriking her like crazy. I think Megan is a very tough fighter. Very tough 145er. She's fighting Ultimate Fighter alum Peggy Morgan. I think that's a great fight. I think Megan can finish her, though. I think within the first 2 rounds, I think Megan can knock her out, finish her, no problem. And Megan's on a tear. So I asked her after her last fight, do you want Cyborg at 145? She said, I don't know if I'm ready for that yet. So we'll have to see. She might get the title shot after this. Otherwise, I don't know how many 145ers are left for her to fight or tear through before she gets that shot. So we'll have to wait and see. Those are the noted fights right now. They're going to announce the rest of the card. There's a few other fights. There's 3 other fights on there, but I haven't heard of any of these girls. They don't have Wikipedia pages, so I'm not really going to touch that one yet. For anybody who's got some love for no love, Cody Garbrandt has a new fight. I was hoping he would end up on the 203 Cleveland card. That's the one he wanted. They put him on the 202 card, which is the Nate Diaz-Conor McGregor fight that we discussed earlier. Cody's going to face off against Takeya Mizugaki. Takeya, he was the guy that Dominic Cruz tore through in a minute. to get his title shot back. Mizugaki's a tough guy, decent gatekeeper for 135, tough everywhere, but his chin has been tested, and I would venture to say that Cody has more power than Dominic in terms of one-punch power. I think Cody has an easy night with him. I think Almeida might have been a tougher test for Cody, and he tore through him. I was at that fight. I was actually going for Almeida. Don't hurt me, but I was going for Almeida, and he just ripped through him. I think this is a fight for Cody to enter the higher ranking, work his way towards Dominic or whoever might be the champ when he gets his title shot. So I think between Mizugaki and Cody, I got Garbrandt all day, knockout in the first round. So another slugfest that actually did get added to UFC 203. We have a women's bantamweight fight between Jessica Ai, who's being given another chance after her loss to Sarah McMahon at that fight card, Almeida Garbrandt. Tough to watch. I like Jessica. She's a tough chick. That was a tough fight for her. Sarah's a great grappler, but it was kind of a tough fight for both. Kind of boring for the fans, but she was on the wrong side of that decision. Jessica Ai is returning in her hometown of Cleveland to face off against great striker, Brazilian pit bull, Bethe Correia. I like that fight. I don't think it goes to the ground. I think the two slug it out for 3 rounds unless one of them falls before it. But I think Jessica's more of a technical striker. I think Bethe Correia is more of a power puncher. So it'll be interesting to watch. I'm very much looking forward to this fight. I'm not picking either one of them yet. I like both girls. I just think it's a great fight for the fans, great fight for both of them. If Jessica loses, arguably she might get cut. I hope she doesn't. But, I'm not calling that right now because the fight's not coming yet. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. But I like the fight. Anybody who's a fan of good striking matchups and good boxers, this is one to watch. This is definitely going to be one to watch. So it's going to be a fun fight. Wouldn't doubt if it ends up on a Fight Pass or a televised prelim. Don't know if it'll make the main card. So this should end up a free fight. So you could watch two sluggers at 135. Just punch it out, kick it out, do whatever they need to do, and just bang them. Just throw down and bang. 2 Bellator announcements. I'm going to finish the news portion of this with. So last weekend's fight, which was Dantas and Galvao, Chidi and Jokoani was not supposed to fight the guy he fought. He was supposed to fight Doug Lima. But on the London card, there's been 2 recent changes for Bellator, which I think is Bellator 158. It was supposed to be Doug Lima against Chidi. He got moved up because Josh Koscheck dropped out of his fight against Paul Daly. So Paul Daly's now going to fight Douglas Lima in London. And the other fight that's been changed, another 170 fight, MVP Michael Venom Page was supposed to fight Fernando Gonzalez, which I think is like the 3rd time they've set this fight up, and it didn't happen. Fernando Gonzalez dropped out from what I heard due to visa issues. He couldn't put the visa together. There were some issues with traveling and whatever. He has been replaced by Evangelista Cyborg, the male Cyborg, so don't get confused. We're not doing a male versus female fight. So it's going to be MVP versus Cyborg. In that fight, MVP has great striking, good submissions. I think Cyborg has decent striking, better submissions. So it really depends on where it goes, but I know that Cyborg's chin is suspect. So I've got MVP by knockout in this one. I think he kind of gets his range and starts throwing those crazy strikes, and I think Cyborg goes to sleep. So we'll see what happens, but I'm picking Cyborg on that one. That one's also on the London card. So 2 great fights to look forward to. Two fights that are both, all 4 guys are decent sluggers, strikers. So I think most of them stay on the feet unless Cyborg goes for a takedown, but I don't know if he's going to get MVP to the ground. So that's it on that one. So that's all my fight announcements, news announcements, everything like that. I did a Q&A about a week ago. Got a few people to send me some stuff. So I'm going to read the questions, and then I'm going to answer what I think. I took some notes, so I don't have to switch the screen or anything like that. Kyle Ballinger, at Kyle Ballinger, asked, if Fedor was to come in to the UFC, would you rather have him fight Lesnar, Barnett, Verdum, Arlovsky, or someone else? You know, it's a great question. It's a really good question. You know, and Fedor fought this weekend. Didn't look amazing. Didn't look like the old Fedor, but, you know, not everybody lasts forever. In my opinion, I would like to see Fedor Barnett for a few reasons. You know, styles make fights. Both have great submissions. I think Fedor's a little bit better of a striker. Barnett has a decent chin on him. But my feeling on this fight, or my preference for this fight, is that Barnett and Fedor were supposed to fight at Affliction Trilogy many years ago. I had tickets to that, and it got canceled because Barnett dropped out, and then they couldn't find a decent replacement. Then Affliction closed their doors as a fight promotion, so we never saw it. You know, like I said, it's a style matchup, and, you know, Fedor isn't the same. He's not the old Fedor. If he goes in there against Lesnar, you know, it's a good fight. I think either one could win that fight. The only thing is, Lesnar would go for takedowns, and Fedor has great submissions off his back or on top. And on the feet, I think Fedor could knock Brock out. Verdum Fedor again, I don't need to see it. I don't need to see that again. I saw that television episode. Run the credits. I know how it ends. You know, could Fedor do better? Yes, but in my opinion, I think Verdum has gotten better than he was, and he already beat Fedor. And I think Fedor has lessened in terms of skill. So that's I don't need to see that. And Fedor Arlovsky, once again, I saw that television episode. Could Fedor knock out Arlovsky? Yes. Could Arlovsky knock out Fedor? Yes. Can Fedor submit Arlovsky? Yes. Can Arlovsky submit Fedor? Probably not. But once again, I don't need to see that rematch. Arlovsky got knocked the fuck out. He face planted from like 8 feet in the air because he went for some stupid flying knee. Not his brightest decision. So that's what I think. I picked Barnett. Fight never happened, and I think that's the best fight to make for Fedor in terms of showings in the UFC. So we have our next question comes from Corey at Corey Danis. What are your top 3 favorite fights of all time? Mine are Edgar Maynard 2 and 3 and Jones Gustafsson. Great fights, Corey. I love them. Edgar Maynard 3 was tough for me because I was training with Gray at the time. I was Extreme Couture. I was watching him every day. I thought he was going to do great, you know. And he had Frankie beat, and then he lost. They went to a draw, and then he got knocked out in the next one. You know, and Jones Gustafsson, of course, is one of the greatest fights of all time. But my top 3 fight picks, I would have to go with Wanderlei Silva and Brian Stann, and these are in no particular order. I'm not doing like top 3, 1, 2, 3. I'm just giving you 3 of my favorite fights. I have a lot of favorite fights. It's taken me a while to narrow them down. These are the 3 I felt worth mentioning. Wanderlei Silva, Brian Stann in Japan, fucking 2-round, just rock 'em, sock 'em robots. Both got rocked many times, and Wanderlei ended up on the good side of that. The other one, the second one, is Cowboy Cerrone against Ben Henderson back in WEC. That ended up being fight of the year. I think it was 2009. You know, guys, they were getting crazy submissions on each other. They were battling it out for 5 rounds. They kept escaping submissions, going back and forth, back and forth. That was one of the most technical, fun fights I've ever watched. I loved it. Couldn't get enough of it. Just made me happy. You know, and the other one, I'm a little biased in this one. Y'all can give me shit for it. I'm sure you can see behind me. That's my Conor wall back there. Everything Conor McGregor memorabilia on the wall. Conor Aldo, you know, and here's why. I know it didn't last long. It was 13 seconds. And, you know, people are going to say, well, that wasn't really a fight, or, you know, now you can't qualify that as your favorite fight or the best fight. Well, he asked me my favorite fight, and I like this because, you know what, I'm a huge McGregor fan. I wanted McGregor to win, but going into it, weeks before, months before, I'm like, if this fight happens, it's going 5. I'm nervous. Aldo could beat McGregor. I don't want to see him stopped. I want him to fucking do it. And Conor went in there. And I'm sitting on my couch, covering my eyes. I'm like, I can't watch this. I'm worried. I'm worried for Conor. And Conor went out, 13 seconds, knocked him out, and I lost my shit. I was at my parents' house, and I think anybody within a 4-mile radius heard me screaming. Quick fun fact, my brother was with me. He was going for Aldo, and I jumped in his face and just started yelling and screaming, and I went ape shit. It was so much fun, one of the best moments. So that would be number 3 for now. So next we have Roybal Jr. at JR Mods 22. Kane, Brock, or Fedor? Who would it be best to have a win over in terms of legacy? I say Kane. Well, let's see, Junior. You know, that's a tough question to answer, and here's why. It's tough to say because the answer you have to base it on prior legacy up to current times. You know, you're looking at the 3 guys. You got Kane. Kane, at one point, best heavyweight in the UFC, 2-time heavyweight champion. Beat Brock. So that kind of knocked Brock out of the situation. But at the time, he was a heavyweight champion, was dominating everybody. Kane got beat by Verdum. He got beat by Junior, but then beat Junior 2 more times. So in terms of legacy, you also have to base it on promotion. You know, because, you know, Fedor was in Pride and Strikeforce, whereas Kane and Brock were only in the UFC. So it depends on how you base the promotions. Is UFC tougher than Strikeforce? Is Pride tougher than UFC? It's tough to say. In terms of all-time legacy, even now, like I said, it's tough to say. I'd have to say Fedor. Just because the name is bigger. I know more people know Brock, and a lot of people know Kane, but I'd have to say Fedor because he's still arguably the greatest heavyweight of all time. And I'm going to say that forgetting that I watched his fight with Maldonado this weekend. Not a huge fan. That was tough to watch. Very interesting take on it of how it was judged, and if Fedor was out, should have been stopped, whatever. Not getting into that at all. So, I'd say Fedor. We'll end it there. Angel, at AngelD315. Do you give a shit if Fedor signs with the UFC? That ship has long sailed, and I honestly could care less at this point. That brings up the thing from before. Legacies, promotions, fight organizations. You know, it's not as important as it used to be. Fedor is not the same Fedor anymore. He's still relevant. So the question, if finally answered, even though Fedor isn't the same as before, I'd like to see him in there. But after seeing his recent performances, you know, if they gave him a crack at anybody in the top 5 in the UFC, I think he loses. You know, and a lot of people are arguing Fedor. Yeah, but you know what? He arguably got beat and arguably got knocked the fuck out by a 205er over the weekend. And I think he might have got the nod because it was in Russia, or they made it keep going because it was in Russia. In the UFC, the guys that people want him to fight, you know, in terms of the Cain Velasquez, the Junior Dos Santos, Verdum again, you know, Mark Hunt. You know, it's tough to say. If he fought Stipe, I think Stipe murders him. You know, look at what Maldonado did to Fedor, and then look what Stipe did to Maldonado. And keep in mind, I do know that Fabio Maldonado is a 205er, but he fought Stipe and Fedor both at heavyweight. So keep that in mind. I think Fedor doesn't crack top 5. I think a few years ago it would have been a better option, but based on what I've read over the years and understood, the contract that the UFC tried to give Fedor years ago was what Fedor called a slave contract. So at this point, it'd be nice to see him in there, but I don't want to see his legacy tarnished by him getting knocked the fuck out like 3-4 times straight and then just getting cut or retiring or whatever it is. So that's really it. We got one more question from my buddy Noah at Gale Noah. Who you got in the rematch? Conor McGregor or Nate Diaz? Hashtag UFC 202. Well, bias aside, bias aside, nobody's going to believe me. I still have McGregor. I think McGregor can pull it off. Do I guarantee his victory? No. But I think McGregor is taking the better steps towards this fight. He's training at 170 for 170. He's already seen what Nate has to offer. And I think that based on Conor's camp and who he's brought in and what he can do, I truly believe he can pull it off. Could I be wrong? Yes. I could definitely be wrong. No question about it. But who do I have? Conor McGregor, the notorious one. So that's who I'm picking. Am I going to be as sad as if Nate wins again? I don't know. I'll probably be upset, but you know what? We'll just have to wait and see what happens. UFC 202. So that's really it. I finished the Q&A, finished my fight announcements. Like I said before, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat at CB the Grenade, and you can find me on Facebook at CB Gold. I will be doing these shows once or twice a week. Like I said, if there's a breaking important announcement, I will drop one in real quick. Look out for my YouTube channel. I think it's under CB the Grenade or CB Gold. So you can find me on there. Click subscribe so you can get updates when I upload new ones. And I'll be putting the links on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of the above. So you can check me out. Tell your friends. CB Gold. I'm also on the MMA Roasted podcast. Co-host on there, so you'll hear me on there as well. But this is just a one-on-one with me and my webcam of what I think about what's going on in the world of MMA. And like I said, if you have questions for me, shoot me a tweet, comment on Instagram, add me on Facebook, shoot me a message, whatever you want. One quick thing, if you add me on Facebook, make sure to message me and tell me you added me and where you know me. I get a lot of ads. And I just want to know, who's following, whatever, and who wants to be on my Facebook. The Facebook has all my fighter photos. You'll see my 1,400 plus fighter photos. And just keep looking out for these shows. I really appreciate the viewers, the followers, and like I said, tell your friends, word of mouth. I'm going to keep doing this as long as people want to watch it. And not sure if they'll be this long every time. We have a lot to cover today. But again, thank you all. Thank you all for supporting me through my MMA Roasted co-hosting and supporting me to start this show. I love all you guys. I really appreciate it. And I'll keep my fight announcements around too if I'm going to be in an event. Or if you're coming my way to SoCal, hit me up. I'd love to meet up, grab a brew, do something. So look out for CB's Gold, hosted by me, the one and only CB Gold, a.k.a. Psycho. And we'll see you guys soon.